Do you like being sad? Do you like dragons and violent revolutions? Well, friends, look no further. Hi guys, welcome back, bienvenue and all that jazz. It's time to talk about some books, or in particular today, I'll be telling you the gist, the feelings surrounding the Aurelian cycle. So that is Fireborn and Flamefall, and then book 3 just came out this month and it's called Fury Song, and I've read it, but I only have it in a e-arc format. So let's just talk about this. So the Aurelian cycle is a trilogy of books. It is technically written in the kind of YA age range. However, I know that people kind of get triggered when they're like, oh, it's YA, but like, I would argue that this book tackles some really difficult themes. It tackles things like childhood trauma, violent revolutions. It tackles political theory and how do you try to make the best form of government that will help the most people, and trying to grapple with those realizations that maybe you can't make something that's perfect for everybody. So I would say that it has a very nuanced discussion on these topics. So if you're one of those people that's like, I just don't personally read my... I would argue that you should still give the Aurelian cycle a chance because it feels very different from that. It does have some tropes. It feels a little bit like early dystopian type vibes, but with fantasy elements. But I would argue that it doesn't necessarily have the kind of angst and romance-centered plots that one tends to kind of attribute to a book written for a young adult audience. So you should still give Fireborn a chance. Now, let's kind of move on. What is this series about? So this series starts with, we are following the aftermath of a violent and bloody revolution. In this world, there used to be this ruling class of dragon lords and dragon riders that subjugated the rest of the people. They took tithes in the form of food. They treated basically anybody underneath them as objects and slaves. They weren't really seen as people unless you were one of these ruling dragon lord families. And so the people rose up against them and basically slaughtered every dragon lord, all of them gone. And they did stuff to the dragons, and it's very like graphic, very violent, very intense stuff. And so we are following two main characters. We're following Lee and Annie. And so Lee is a son of one of the Dragon Lord families, and he somehow made it through the revolution. We don't totally know how at the start of the book, but he is currently being trained to be part of this like people's army that rides the dragons. And so they need a new like general to lead the dragon flying army. And so the book starts with this competition between this group of students trying to become the first rider of this nation. That's kind of where a lot of the initial setup happens. And then our other character is Annie, who comes from a serf family. So she used to be subjugated, and she is now also able to ride a dragon. And she is also competing for that leading the dragon army position. And the way that she has been able to be brought up is this new regime has brought in this idea of this metals test. So you kind of test your aptitude, and depending on your aptitude, you get assigned a metal. So I think bronze was like manual laborers, silver is like skilled labor, and then there's golds, and then the dragon riders are, I think, slightly above that. So there's kind of this caste system in this society, and of course, when there's a caste system, there starts to be inequality, and there starts to be this sense of the people who were in power pre-revolution seem to be able to kind of get a leg up on the test. And so there's just all these nuanced discussions happening. But that's kind of the gist. And then we follow what happens as other nations come into conflict with this nation. And then there's unrest under the current regime and all of these questions of, was it better before or is it better now? And it's great. I would say that there are kind of large sections of the series that aren't particularly like action packed. There are certainly dragon fights, all of that kind of stuff that you kind of expect. There's uprising stuff, and then there's descriptions of what happened to these children and the trauma that they've been through. But I think it really shines if you're somebody who likes political-based fantasy. So if you like thinking about what makes a good society for people and kind of looking at it through this fantastical lens, then look no further. This is 100% up your alley and you should get to it ASAP. If you like action-packed, almost like Hunger Games with dragons-ish, it's not quite that same competition system where horrible things are done to the contestants. It's not quite that, but it kind of has that flavor of competition. It has that flavor of dystopian world. So if you want kind of Hunger Games, but with dragons, much more sadness and more focused on like the politics of how we got here and what do we do now, this is 100% the series for you. I would also say that the characters are fantastic. You will hate some characters. You'll have that visceral sense of like, you're the worst, please die. You'll have those characters that you want to protect at all costs. I will warn you, however, that these books probably have a lot of trigger warnings. If you are somebody who's particularly sensitive to that kind of thing, you should maybe go look up all of the trigger warnings because there's a lot of them in these books. And if you're somebody who doesn't want to just read sad, because these books are incredibly sad, it's kind of like bad thing after 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 bad thing, like almost the whole series through, and then there'll be like a little glimmer of like, oh, maybe? No. So just be aware of that. So if you're not really in the headspace that you want like depressing books, wait for this series until you want to be in your feels. But other than that, I think it's 100% worth checking out the Aurelian cycle, and I would highly recommend checking this series out when you get the chance. If you have any other questions or things that you'd like to ask about this series, or if you've read this series and want to gush with me about it, let me know in the comments down below. And like usual, while you're down there, go ahead and click that like button. Subscribe if you haven't already for more bookish shenanigans like this from moi. But that's all I have for you guys today. So other than that, I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I'll talk to you again soon. Bye!